Hi everybody, we're going to continue our discussion of solving linear systems of linear inequalities, and we're going to do it by graphing. So here's our first system, and as you can see, these are already in slope-intercept form, so they're going to be really easy to graph. So I'm going to graph the y-intercept of my first inequality, which is -4. Then I'm going to use my slope, which is 1, to find more points. I'm going to space my points out a little bit, but that's just so you can see the line better. So there's some more points on my line. Now I'm going to graph my next y-intercept, which is positive. Oh, sorry, that's a dashed line because it's just less than, it's not less than or equal to. Now I'm going to graph my next intercept, which is +3. And then I'm going to use my slope, which is -1. So I'm going to go the other direction and fill in some more points. And this time I'm going to have a solid line because that is greater than or equal to. So there are my two border lines. Now I just need to figure out which of these 4 sections need to be shaded. Remember, when you're shading, you don't want to cross over any lines. So it's just going to be within one of those 4 sections. 0, 0 is my favorite point to check first. So let's check 0, 0 first of all. This is going to say 0 is less than -4. That is very not true. So 0, 0. So this is not going to be our section here. Don't put the X's on your graph. This is just so I can keep track of where I've already checked. Let's check 10, 10 up in the top. So put 10 here, 10 here. 10 is less than 6. Again, that is very not true. So not up there. Let's check 10, 0 over at the right. So I'm going to plug 10 in for X and 0 in for Y. 0 is less than 6. Okay, well, that one's true. Now we got to check the bottom one. And remember, this, since this is -X, that's going to become -10 plus 3. So this is saying 0 is greater than or equal to -7. Again, that's very true. So we found something that makes both of them true. So we're going to shade this section over here on the right. So there is your graph of the system of inequalities. This one has 3, but it's going to work very much the same way. This one here at the bottom, though, you'll notice is not in slope-intercept form, so you do need to get y by itself before you attempt to graph it. Go ahead and pause and try and graph it on your own right now, and we will check in just a moment. Okay, hopefully you just did that. Let's see how you did. Okay, there are my 3 border lines. As you can see, I went ahead and circled them with the color that I used on the graph so you can match them up. You'll notice only the green one is a dashed line because that's the only one that's not equal to. And then when I check to see where I'm shading, 0 makes all of those true. So I do need to shade right here in the middle of that triangle. That will not always be true, but that's usually a good first place to check when you have multiple inequalities. Check on the inside. Okay. Now here we're given a graph and we want to know what the system of inequalities are. So let's start with just what the line would be, and then we'll figure out what the inequality symbols are. So if I start with this solid purple line, first of all, we're going to have y, and we know because it's solid it's going to be equal to something. So I'm going to go ahead and put that line down there to remind me. And my intercept is +2, so I'm going to go ahead and write that. And it looks like I'm going to have to go up 2 and over 1 before I hit another point. So that makes my slope +2. Okay, let's do the dashed blue line now. I know it's not going to be equal to, so I'm just going to leave some space there because it's a dashed line. My intercept is -2. And it looks like I need to go up 2 and over 2 before I hit my next point. 2 over 2 simplifies to 1 over 1, so my slope is just 1 here. So I'm going to do x minus 2. Now I need to figure out a point that makes both of those true. Well, my favorite point just so happens to be available. 0, 0. So let's plug it in and see which way this needs to go in order for it to be true. So 0 is something to 0 plus 2, which would just be 2. 0 is definitely less than 2. Down at the bottom, we're going to have 0 is something to -2. Well, 0 is greater than -2. So right there, there are your 2 inequalities. Y is less than or equal to 2x plus 2, and y is greater than x minus 2. There they are. Okay, go ahead and pause and try this one on your own. Be very careful here though. Each of these lines represents 2. This is going by 2. So be careful when you're figuring out your slope and your intercept. For these intercepts, go ahead and assume that's 7 and this is -5. I know it's not marked there, but go ahead and make that assumption for me. And we'll check your work in just a moment. Okay, let's see how you did. Again, this one was tricky because of the scale, but these are the two inequalities you should have come up with. Y is less than or equal to 1/4 x plus 7, and y is greater than -5/2 x minus 5. If you got different numbers on there, then you might just want to take a look at the scale and see if you can see why it should be that. And 0, 0, again, is handy in our shaded region, so that makes it easy to check to see which way our inequality symbols should go. Let's try one more. This time there's 3. So make sure you have 3 inequalities when you're done. Go ahead and pause it and try, and we'll check in just a moment. Okay, let's see how you did. Again, 0, 0 was shaded in this one. I love when 0, 0 is shaded. It makes it a lot easier to figure it out. These are your 3 inequalities. Y is less than -2/3 x plus 3. X is greater than or equal to -4, and y is greater than or equal to -1. All right, now we move on to your very favorite thing in the world, word problems. Yay! Write and graph a system of linear inequalities. The National Collegiate Athletic Association regulates the lengths of aluminum baseball bats used by college baseball teams. The NCAA states that the length in inches of the bat minus the weight in ounces of the bat cannot exceed 3. Bats can be purchased at lengths from 26 to 34 inches. So we're going to have several inequalities here when we're done figuring them out. Let's just figure out what they're going to be first. I'm going to use X for the length of my bat and Y for the weight of my bat. So the very first thing it says is that the length of the bat, which is X, minus the weight of the bat, which is Y, cannot exceed 3. So it needs to be less than or equal to 3. It can be 3, it just can't be more than 3. So there's our first one. Bats can be purchased at lengths from 26 to 34 inches, which means the length needs to be at least 26 inches. It can be 26, but it's got to be at least that. And it also needs to be less than or equal to 34 inches. Now, I've covered all the information that's in there, but there's one that is not written in there that you still need, and it's kind of just a common sense thing that you have to figure out. If we're talking about the weight of a bat, we've talked about how the different lengths it could be, but the weight of a bat needs to be, there has to be some weight to the bat. We can't have a negative weight, right? So the invisible inequality that's written in there is Y is greater than or equal to 0, because it's impossible to have the negative weight of a bat. Okay. Pause for a moment, go ahead and graph those 4 and figure out where the shading goes. Again, since we're talking about length and weight, you know that everything's going to need to be positive, so you don't even need to bother checking all of those things that are going to be in the negative quadrants. So check the sections where everything's going to be positive when you're trying to figure out your shading, and we'll see how you did in just a moment. Okay, let's see what our graph looks like. Here's our graph of the 4 inequalities, and I'm going to pause for a second and circle which color is which so you can see it a little better. There we go. Now you can match up the different colors with the different lines over there. They were all solid lines this time. And notice I used a scale of 4 here since my graph is so small, so each of those lines actually represents 4. Now we're going to use that to solve the answer, to figure out the answer. A sporting goods store sells an aluminum bat that is 31 inches long and weighs 25 ounces. Use the graph to determine if this bat can be used by a player on an NCAA team. So we're going to use our graph. We're going to go over 31 and up 25 and see if that lands in our shaded region. So we're going to go over 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 26, that's 30. So 31 would be right about here. And then we're going to go up 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 25. Ooh, it's going to be close. Ooh, that's a little too close to tell based on the graph. So let's, whenever in doubt, let's go back to our equation. So let's plug 31 and 25 into our equations and see what happens. So here's our equations again. Oops. Let's plug in our 31 and 25, 31 and 25. So this is going to be 31. Whoops. Let's use a real pen. 31 minus 25. Well, that's going to be 6. 6 is less than or equal to 3. That is not true. So this is very definitely not going to be in the shaded region. So this is no. All right. Well, hopefully you've learned a little bit of something today. Good luck.